This podcast is rated E for explicit. Today, we are kicking off our Dear Love Interest series with Denzel, a former classmate and a current friend. He came to the studio to share his story of love, loss, and what it means to be pansexual, among other things. But first, this series was inspired by a few unpublished poems I wrote that talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly things we all experience in our search to find love, both outside and within ourselves. So now that we have that covered, let's get started. You met me in the midst of many things. Shedding skin, sprout wings, looking at life as a spiritual being through a human lens, having conversations with God about so many things. This show is your invitation. The poet God is the conversation. So Denzel, why don't you tell the audience how we became such wonderful friends?
All right, so we're sitting, and I think it was, what was it, English 2?
It was English 2, yes, it was English 2.
English 2 in some lady's class, and she was always late. Always late.
She was late. She was always late, and she was always absent.
Always late. Well, Akil and I would just sit in the front row, or the second front row, and just, like, chill, waiting for her to come in.
Right.
And occasionally, like, you know, I would definitely fall asleep. And
you slept a lot. I do remember you sleeping a whole lot.
Oh, yeah. You know, we exchanged, like, writing information. It was like, oh, you're a writer? It's like, oh, I also write things.
Right.
Let's write together.
Right.
And we just started hanging out after that. You, my girlfriend at the time, Jasmine, was really close to you.
Yeah,
because you introduced her to me, as a matter of fact. I appreciate it.
I don't remember that, but I don't remember that at all. I just don't.
Oh, you don't remember that?
No, I don't remember introducing you guys at all.
Okay, yeah, you're right. It wasn't her introducing. It was she introduced me. That's how all three of us got close, because you already knew her.
Right.
I knew her through Lucas.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. And
gotcha.
All three of us got close.
Gotcha. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, I remember shortly after you and I kind of really started to really become like cool. After that introduction with you and Jasmine, she told me, I believe it was her who told me that you guys were dating. Mm. And so I was like, oh, okay, you know, because I didn't know anything about it, and I certainly didn't hear it from you. So you know,
I think we stopped seeing each other in class and just stopped seeing you on campus. Period. So like I couldn't ever tell you until that day we came to your house and everything, and had a really heart-to-heart conversation about everything.
So let's talk about that heart-to-heart conversation.
Oh man, that heart-to-heart conversation was amazing.
I have to tell you that I was like really shocked.
It almost like some like really interesting things about us. Like that was probably the first time I actually like came out to like two people that I probably actually cared about.
Mm-hmm. Because I had no idea about a lot of things, but I'm gonna let you tell what you recollect about how you.
Yeah, we'll see what I can remember.
Yeah. So you guys came over.
We came over just to chill with you and all that. You know, exchange notes and all that. You two,
right?
And you know, you asked more information about my life. I was like, oh yes, and I had asked like, hey, are you gay? Because I kept like listening to your voice and everything. Of course, I was like slightly attracted to you, but at the time, and like, hey, are you gay? I was like, what? No, I'm not really into that. I was like, huh, interesting. And it all just kind of like shifted from there. Like Jasmine says like, oh yeah, he's bisexual, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm bisexual. Like at the time, I identified as bisexual.
Okay. And
that was that. Can't really recall much. I know we talked about home life a lot, and that was really touching, especially, some of our similarities with dealing with parents and family and like
exactly
the expectations put on all of us,
right?
Like to be who we need to be,
right? Or who they tell us that we should be.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember being really kind of caught off guard by the question. Because I remember we just kind of came into the room and I felt like you kind of took this kind of sledgehammer and like, "Bap, are you gay?"
That's me. I'm very blunt and straightforward.
You definitely were. And so I was like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah, that's a problem.
And then even before I got to kind of, I'm sure I gave you like a very political answer to that question, and. Then I remember you kind of hit me right over the head again, and you were like, "Well, I kind of had a crush on you," and I'm like, "Excuse me?" And then I think I remember saying something along the lines of, when you say a crush, like you mean like, "Oh, like a bromance," and you were like, "No,
I was like attracted to like I see you walking every day with that, and it was like, God damn, he's cute," and I just just keep my thoughts and hands to myself because I'm still not out at all.
Right.
So it'd be difficult for me to even do anything with a man.
Right. So I just remember, just kind of trying to get my head wrapped around all of this and the boldness of it, and then looking at Jasmine sitting over there in the corner, and I'm like, she was like just kind of there. You understand?
Oh yeah, Jasmine was just taking the brunt of everything.
Yeah,
chilling in the back. She's like, "Oh no, I already knew all this."
Right, and I'm like, "What?" And so I was like, "Okay, this is interesting," and I did not honestly really feel comfortable with, because I had questions. Obviously, I had tons of questions, but it's like, where do I start, and then where would it end? And so I wasn't really comfortable, especially at the time, talking about all of that stuff. So, it's interesting to be here with you today having a more in-depth conversation about all of it. But one of the things that I remember us discussing was about, I think you said something about your father and how your relationship was with him, and especially in relationship to that. And like you just talked about not being quote unquote out and having to deal with the difficulty of that.
I mean, yeah, like we all know, like, especially being like a Black or African American household, like, things are still taboo. Like your sexuality is still taboo and all that. So, especially if you like, oh, you like guys, like what's wrong with you? Where did I fail as a parent? Which I hear a lot sometimes. And
right.
It was like, no, you didn't fail as a parent.
Right.
And anything, like some of my friends have told me their stories. I'm like, no, baby.
As I sat there talking to Denzel, I was reflecting on how I thought I'd go to school and finish up these classes and mind my own business and then go home. And somehow it didn't happen that way. There were so many moments, like this one morning I walked him to our teacher's office after we had finished a test that he thought he had failed. He told me he never had a friend like me. And maybe it was because I saw so much of myself in him. We hate to have to need each other. But God seems to have designed it that way. And it's hard for me to look into the heart of another and turn my back without honoring the fact that they had the courage to open up to me. What a gift that is, for someone to allow you to see their humanity. We'll be right back after these messages. I am so excited to be a part of the wonderful world of podcasts, and to celebrate, I'm giving away a copy of my book, Lies I Never Quite Believed, which averages 5 stars on Amazon and iBooks. Now, a drawing will be held after each episode of Season 1. All you have to do to enter is subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on whatever platform you happen to be listening on. And then send me a screenshot at poetgodmail@gmail.com. That's poetgodmail@gmail.com. This giveaway is only eligible for listeners living in the United States of America. When Denzel and I sat down for this interview, I'd noticed that his personal style had changed since I'd last seen him, and I asked him what inspired that. Here's what he said.
It's me trying to make a change in myself to step out of like what I'm expected to be and how I'm expected to act, and just taking charge of something.
So it's like rebellion in a way. Rebellion from expectations, what's expected.
I mean, my clothing is a bit punkish, so yeah.
Okay.
I do have a punkish style, so yes, in a way that would be rebellion.
Right. And so is the devil, so to speak, that's in your head, or the anti whatever you want to be? Is that the image of your father?
It's that's a tough one. It's kind of tough because it's not so much the image; it's just the voice, especially that fatherly voice that you also compare to God. Especially if you've been raised in a Christian household, like that is your father, and your heavenly father might also be your earthly father, in my opinion, because those two are interchangeable to me. Those are the law.
Right.
But
and it's interesting that you say that. You know what it makes me think about? I in the beginning of my book, there's a piece in there where I talk about who God was to me as a young child, and in my mind, God was my grandfather because he was, a minister in the church, and he was the vision I had at that age of what was holy.
Ooh, wow.
And so he would have been that voice, the law, so to speak, in my head. And so when I was kind of dealing with all of these conflicts within myself, that was the quote unquote law that I was breaking. And I definitely
understand you there.
Yeah,
definitely, because it's that voice, just that stern, powerful, yet loving voice, and you can confuse that sometimes, especially if that loving voice is mixed with questionable behavior and questionable, just ideals.
Right. I wish I could say that I felt that there was love in the voice that I heard, but maybe it might have been easier. But I wish I could say that, but that's not the case.
Love is iffy, and it's a strange concept, but someone can still love you and someone can still hurt you, and I know that much, and I've learned that much so far.
Right. Especially if their quote unquote love comes with conditions and expectations and
some pain
and expectations of something that you can't never ever measure up to or be, and then trying to make yourself into that, it's impossible.
Oh yeah.
And that's the pain. I remember asking you what you identify as, and I remember you saying that you tell people bisexual when you don't really want to get into the specifics.
I identify as pansexual because it's just free love for everyone. In my opinion, it's not confined by gender or certain expectations. Just like, hey, I connect with you on like a very deep and personal level, which can be viewed as just a regular normal relationship, which is why I don't really label anything.
Right. And just I talking about labels, because as I was preparing for this interview with you, I was thinking about, oh my God, I really hate labels.
You do.
I do. I also because they come with so much baggage and so much I kind of view labels as like single stories. They
like
tell
if you're,
one single story, and often it's a story that is rooted in a lot of mistruths and a lot of stereotypes that don't have anything to do with the people that these quote unquote stories are supposed to be.
Your stories
about.
are written by the people that probably like hurt or oppressed you. So yeah,
exactly. And so for me to take quote unquote ownership of something that somebody else, created and branded, and then to say this is who I am, never has felt right to me. And so that's why, I've always kind of felt the way I've felt about, these terms, gay, straight, whatever, and all of that. And then the other thing is like, we do not require people who live quote unquote normal heterosexual lifestyles to come out as heterosexual,
that's the norm.
Right. And so
heterosexuality is the norm, man.
And the thing about what kind of bothers me about that is that we who are members of other communities, LGBTQ, whatever, we have given them that power to put us in this kind of box, and we have allowed them to impose upon us their expectations and their realities as though it's something that we should expect them to tolerate. You know what I'm saying? Or we should ask for their tolerance. And the way I feel about that, I'm not asking you. You could take your tolerance and fuck yourself with it.
Oh, damn.
Because you tolerate an insect, you tolerate something that's unpleasant. Is not an affectionate term. It's not something that that it's not loving. It's not kind, and it doesn't feel like something that I want to identify with and have anything to do with. That's what I feel about labels and the people that use them and the people that weaponize them.
Yeah.
Because that's what they have become, weapons. But for the sake of this interview,
conversation.
We're gonna use all kinds of labels.
Got to.
But so you talked about what it means to be pansexual, and you basically said it's love of everyone. And I think the one thing that's gonna come up, like when you tell people that you're gay or whatever, the first thing that people's minds tend to go to is sex.
Oh yeah, that's always the thing. It's like it's always towards sex. Like if you're gay, it's like, so you like butt stuff? Okay, hold on, pause. First of all, that's not the first thing that should come to your mind,
right?
But it is, and it's understandable because we're a sexual people. We're a sexual society,
right?
But it's funny. It's weird. It's funny. It shouldn't be funny, but it is. And it's like, so that's it. How do you have sex? Like they just like butt stuff, or if it's a woman, they like, there's no key in the key or the lock in the lock.
Right. And
like one of the most annoying things, the thing I hate hearing, especially when it comes to women, is like there's like if say a dude finds out that she's like gay or vice versa, something, that's a waste of a pussy, or like I'm gonna try to convert her.
Right.
And I'm like, yo, you're rude as fuck.
Right. Yeah, there's no such,
like you're not white.
There's nothing that you have that she wants.
Trust me, like
nothing.
She chose her path.
Right. Well, you said choice, and that's another 4-letter word. When it comes to the LGBT community, right? Because
okay, so there is a choice, and there isn't a choice. You can live your life openly, or you can do what I do and constantly live in secret. I'm hiding in the closet right now.
Oh my god! Denzel said he was nervous about doing this interview, and if he was, I couldn't tell. More with Denzel after these messages. I knew I had to find a way to create this podcast. As all creators know, it can be a long process to bringing something that you love to life. You ask yourself the question, how can I fail? How can I fail when I must do this for my soul to exhale? Late nights, internal fights. It all seems like a small price to pay. If I can go to sleep satisfied at the end of the day. And that's why I'm committed to leaving it all on the table, to making this podcast a reflection of everything I am able to give. Because I want to see this dream live. Now you can be a part of making that vision a reality by making a small monthly donation to help sustain the future of this podcast. Apple Podcast listeners can click details at the bottom of each episode to find the Become a Supporter of this podcast link, or go directly to the support page at anchor.fm/thepoetgod/support. That's anchor.fm/thepoetgod/support. Thank you so much for empowering independent creators like me. Many people still think that sexuality is a choice. And frankly, I don't think those people are doing much thinking at all. But that's where we pick up the conversation from with Denzel.
Your sexuality isn't really a choice. It develops over time. It's part of who you are. It's gonna, whether you like it or not, it's gonna come out. Like when I found out that I also like guys, I was like,
tell me about that, though.
God hates me, doesn't he? That was the first thing that came to my head. It was just, wow, man, I'm so fucked up.
Okay, wait. So tell me about how that evolved for you, with knowing that you had an attraction for guys and what that exactly that attraction was.
It, I guess I could say it really kind of started in high school, where all fun things start.
Right. Right.
I guess I can say it started in high school, like probably towards the junior year and everything, where I started, like, slightly attractive. But
how old are you now?
I'm 22.
Okay.
But yeah, it was, slight attraction. It wasn't anything that I figured would be like gay or sexual, because I didn't consider myself that way. I'm a straight.
When you saw when you had that first like attraction, it was would you have described it like a crush? Oh, I just have he's cute.
It was more of a disgust, because I didn't want to be that person.
So you were disgusted
by myself,
by yourself.
Yeah, it's like, yo, I like a guy. I'm fucking disgusting.
Right.
So I pushed that part of me away, and the thing is, one of my best friends in the world, he had came out to me recently. I was like, what?
Right.
I think it was like right before I graduated. Like, he came out to me, and I was like, wow, man, why didn't you tell me sooner? I would have loved and accepted you, which really wasn't true at that time.
Because you hadn't yet learned to love and accept yourself. Mm-hmm. Right.
But it's like, it really wasn't true, but I know, like, when they had asked me about it, like, a few years later, I was like, yeah, like, now you needed to hear that. And, like, now that I've grown as a person, and I've watched you grow, you're an amazing and a beautiful human, man. And, like, I love you no matter what you say. And just looking back on it, like, just a journey of self-discovery, just realizing that, I can also like guys and be a pretty decent human. Now that also comes with its own issues, because, you can only come out to certain people, especially you find, like, gay or LGBTQ friends at work. Right. Around, and you hang around them a lot more than you hang around anybody else. Which could give you away, but you don't really care, because those are the people you get along with. And those are the people you understand. Those are the people you want to be friends with. Right. Because they understand you, especially if they're black, POC, whatever you want to say. Right.
You know what? It's interesting, too, because in my experience, especially partially growing up in New York City, there's not much that you don't see growing up in New York City.
Ooh, man. I didn't know you were from New York, though.
I lived there from 6th grade to my junior year in high school. Nice. And so those were very formative years, and as you could imagine, a lot.
New York is rough, yo.
Oh yeah, New York is rough.
I have a lot of friends from New York.
It is rough. I do not have fond memories. there were some fond memories, but a lot of it was just fear and terror. You know.
What part of New York did you grow up in?
Brooklyn. Yeah. And I went to a very, Pentecostal type of church. And so imagine straddling those two worlds, because I remember just, going to church, and we went to church like 3 times a week, all day Sunday, choir practice, Bible study, the whole thing. And, dealing with that world and hearing those messages from that world, and having to go to school and interact with such diversity. I remember my little crew, I remember there was this girl, a beautiful Puerto Rican girl who used to hang out with us. And she was the first person that I ever really heard talk about sexuality as open as anybody. She was like, she would tell me stuff like, first of all, everybody is gay. She would just say,
like some gay person would say.
She said, and I used to be like looking at her like, what do you mean? And she would be like, she would, of course, joking, of course, but I think what she meant to say was that sexuality is not black or white.
No,
there are a lot of gray areas in sexuality. And so we had a lot of interesting conversations. And, obviously going to a school where you have so much different races and so much different kids at that age coming into whatever it is that they're growing into, being learning to accept, and dealing with that. We had it all in our local clique. And I had a lot of, I had a very kind of opposite view of life, a window to the world that I didn't have in church. And I just remember feeling like, because being conflicted, because I was supposed to not like a lot of these people based off of what I was hearing at church.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? They were worldly, not
worldly,
of
secular,
God. Yeah,
not of God.
Not of God.
Sin.
But I felt more love, more unconditional acceptance, more everything that God was supposed to actually be. I felt from those kids, and I didn't feel
the most. They got it the most. They realized that you need it the most, and when you enter those communities and when you get around people like that, they will show you the most love because they know you need it, because they were you at some point.
Yeah, and they know that, and they understand. They have more compassion because they see more. You know. And it's the thing about, like I said, the whole thing about going back to this whole conversation about labels is that when you're holding so tightly to one single story, you can't hear another story. You have decided that you think you understand everybody's humanity or one story of humanity, and you dismissed everybody else's as and I don't. That's like saying, like, I know what life is on Mars and Jupiter. No, how the fuck do you?
You ever been there?
Right. And unless you are able to come to a conversation and acknowledge that you do not understand, that you do not. When parents, find out their kids are not heterosexual,
or not their kids in some parents' view,
right? You can't understand or learn what you think you already know. I think you have to kind of show up willing to understand. And like I said to somebody recently, if it wasn't in your universe prior to you knowing about your brother or sister or whomever it is in your family, and believe me, there are more in your family than you realize. But if you never had to deal with it, then I don't expect you to understand. I don't think anybody expects you to understand it. But once you do come to that understanding, if you show up to a conversation with your heart open, then people will be able to share things with you from their heart. But you can't show up with judgment and all of this, condemnation, and expect that you're going to get anywhere with that. That conversation will be finished before it begins. And I'm unwilling to give that anymore, to give people that opportunity to be any less than what they would want, which is respect, which is understanding, which is, compassion. So anytime I sense that energy from whomever, I don't have any place for it. No more place for it. No more room. And because many have made a place for it, they've died and gone too soon. We are the ones that we have been waiting for. We are the champions that we wished we had. And now we must stand on the front lines of this war, because there's so many that need it bad. I am loving this conversation between Denzel and I. It truly has no equal, but there is a sequel. So stay tuned for that and so much more. I'm Akil Johnson, the Poet God. Thank you for listening.